Jay here for Stretford Paddock. This is it. This is the big one. Manchester United travelling to Bilbao to face Tottenham Hotspur in the Europa League final. Joe Smith is with me as always. Joe, is this the biggest game since this time last year, the FA Cup final against City?
I mean, as a fan, I think that one was slightly more important that we won that game.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at the significance to Manchester United as a football team, I think this might be the biggest single game since the 2011 Champions League final. Because obviously we've won the league since then, but there's no one specific single game that I think puts you over the line necessarily in those seasons. And I think that we won the FA Cup last season. Within 3 months, the manager had been sacked, and we were worse than ever. So it didn't really have a push, knock-on positive effect that we hoped it might. This game inescapably has massive consequences, because not only is it the Champions League football next season, which we can all enjoy those 8 group games before we get knocked out, but it's also the money side, the financial side. What it means is for faith in the manager. Ten Hag had already won a trophy when it went to that second FA Cup final. People knew that he kind of had that sort of finishing touch. With Amorim, we don't know that. It's absolutely massive. It tells you so much about him, tells you so much about these players, tells you about the project that Ineos are putting together, and it gives financial and sort of emotional backing to new transfers. It encourages players to sign for us that maybe wouldn't otherwise. I think in terms of a single game, this is absolutely gigantic from a club perspective. Obviously, as fans, I'd rather beat City in an FA Cup final. But in terms of what Manchester United is going forward, this game is absolutely huge.
Can I play devil's advocate a little bit?
Okay.
Because I'm playing devil's advocate because I kind of agree with you. But is there not an argument to be made that we're Manchester United, we've been through so much as a club, that losing a Europa League final and not getting Champions League football will be all right.
It will be all right.
We can recover from this.
Yeah.
And maybe there's even an argument that not having European football, just having, for a lot of weeks, one game a week, might, in a perverse way, be better for us.
I can see that, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I don't think you have to look as well at the last 12, 13 years. I'm referencing 14 years. I don't think there's been a single game in that time that has been more important than this. I'm not saying the future of the club rides on this.
No, I know you're not.
Everything will collapse. But I don't think there's been a single match that so much of the momentum of next season and the faith in the manager, the faith in the players, the faith in the ownership, and the potential to bring in new players. I can't think of a single game where so much was so important and it was down to one game. I agree. If we lose, there will be a Man United next season. We will look at the positives. We will play one game a season and a week, and maybe we'll finish 6th instead of 9th. But I just think it helps build so much if we win this game.
I think this has a lot of similarities to 2017 in that respect.
Yeah.
Because I think Jose had won a League Cup, so he had a trophy in the bank, and he's Jose Mourinho. I think he would have had another season regardless, even if we missed out on Champions League. But having that Champions League football going into that following season for Jose Mourinho, not having back-to-back Europa League campaigns or whatever it would have been, I don't even know if it would have been in the Europa League, I can't really remember, but not, having that, the big one in terms of being in the top competition. Also, Jose Mourinho, he would have been viewed as a failure in that first season. I don't think the Carabao Cup, or it was the Carabao one, would have been enough for him. So it does feel a little bit like that, but it's even worse, isn't it? Because we've just finished 16th. I understand why there's so much resting on this and riding on it, and why so many people, myself included, are looking at us thinking, do you know what? If we don't win this could be catastrophic for the club moving forward in terms of who we can buy, for Ruben Amorim as a manager in terms of lack of confidence. Because some of the other games, the 2021 was the Villarreal game, the Europa League final. Yes, in hindsight, it did affect how we viewed Ole, but we still finished second that season. Yeah. You mentioned the Champions League final. The Champions League final is always going to be bigger than the Europa League final. I'm not arguing it isn't. But Fergie was still the manager. We were still one of the best teams in the world. We just were. So it wasn't that difficult to think, okay, we can come back from this. But at the moment, this is the worst United side we've seen in our lifetime. Even me, who's a lot older than you. Yeah. It's the worst team we've ever seen in our lifetimes. You've got a manager who's already under a bit of pressure. Then you've got a new owner who's basically come in and said, we ain't got any dough. So and also the footballing landscape has changed, where so much is about PSR, how much money you've got, how much money you're going to earn. Yeah. It just feels like a whole new world, doesn't it? So in terms of consequences and in terms of what this means, I understand why you're making that argument. Do you think for Ruben Amorim and the players, they just can put this out of their mind in that way? Do you think they need to? Or do you think that they have to sort of consider how much it means to this club and to the fans as well?
I think you need to consider that, and I hope they do, and I hope Tottenham do, because I think with both sets of teams at sort of max emotional capacity in terms of what this means for us, for our manager, for the club, I think United players are better at handling that. I think the likes of Casemiro is better at handling that. I know he might not be fit, but someone like Matthijs de Ligt has won big trophies consistently throughout his career, and even if he's just in training or in the changing rooms, presences like that do make a difference. Bruno Fernandes has won a couple of trophies in the last couple of years as well. And I think it matters. I do think it matters. You look at Tottenham's squad, and I don't know if Reguilon won something sort of off the bench or as a sub for Real Madrid when he was there. Maybe he's got a Champions League name to his, the Champions League win to him, but he wasn't a part of that sort of team. He hasn't got the experience of winning those games on the pitch. I think that their players dim and sort of weaken under that pressure, and I think United's players, generally speaking, step up to it. So I hope they do know it, and I hope if it's the difference between putting in a tackle that might hurt you or sort of going half into the tackle because you think everything matters today. I hope they do go in for that tackle. I hope that they do run a bit harder and maybe have to throw up after the game because they tried harder than they've ever tried. I hope they do all that because it matters and it does make a difference. So I know people say play the game, not the occasion, but the people who are the best at playing the occasion are the ones who win the occasion. It's not just about playing the game. You can't pretend that human beings are going to forget they're in a final or in a tennis, Grand Slam final or in a golf major. People don't forget that. And the people who step up in those games are the ones who are remembered as great players. There's a reason why Didier Drogba is looked at differently to Romelu Lukaku. Both very good players on their day. I would say Lukaku's probably got more goals in his career. Certainly a similar amount.
I think you're right in terms of the amount of goals he scored, yeah.
But Didier Drogba steps up in those big games every single time, and Lukaku's record in big games and finals is woeful. There's a reason Drogba's a legend and Lukaku isn't.
Yeah.
And I think that these sorts of the games are where you can prove that. And like I said, I don't want them to shy away from the occasion. I want them to rise to it.
No, I think you make a great point. I think it's that confidence and almost that assurance and sometimes that calmness. Yes, you want players going that extra mile and throwing themselves into challenges or getting there first or whatever, but you also need those people who can bring a bit of calmness when it's needed to the game, because someone like Casemiro, who's won 5 Champions Leagues, he's won more Champions Leagues than I think, he's obviously won more than United and Spurs put together. Yeah. Like, he knows what it's like to be in a major final. He knows what it's like to have everything on the line. He's been here before at an even bigger scale. So I don't think he will be overawed by the occasion. Bruno Fernandes is going into his 4th final in 3 years, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. He's someone who's led the team in many ways. As you mentioned as well, some of the other players, de Ligt, if he's available, Maguire's played in big games as well. There is that sense of being in a final, having won trophies, know what it's about.
Another one.
Onana's been in a Champions League final. Yeah, he was. Final. We all watched that against City and said, we were all buzzing when we got him.
Yep.
I know he's sort of, his luster may have dimmed somewhat, but you're right. Luke Shaw has been, if he plays, has been in a European Championship final. I think he's been in 2. Scored in it, yeah. So, you're looking through the team, you're going, okay, most of these players have been there or thereabouts. There's no reason to think that they can't sort of mentally get the head round the fact they're in a final where you look at Spurs, maybe that is an advantage. With all that being said, then let's get into predicted 11s, because I'll start with you.
Okay.
This is the big one. We do have to say we don't know. We haven't had the latest up to date injury sort of news, because there's 1 or 2 players who it's not quite certain whether they're going to be fully fit, whether they're available, whether they can start. So we're taking a punt, but I'll let you talk.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, De Ligt's one of those players. I think Dallow's one, Yoro's one as well. I've gone with this slightly more sort of playing it safe option.
Okay.
So I've gone with Onana in goal, goes without saying. Dorgu on the left-hand side, Mazraoui on the right. I think it will be Shaw, Maguire and Lindelof. I think if there's any other centre-backs, whether that be De Ligt or Yoro, Lindelof will come out. And then if both of those two are fit, De Ligt and Yoro, I think Shaw and Lindelof will come out. But if it is as it has been, I think we'll see that. And that's mostly because I think we need Mazraoui on the right-hand side. Obviously, you can swap Lindelof and Mazraoui, but then you have to find a right wing-back, or you put Dorgu out there, you have to find a left wing-back. I think we struggle there. So I've gone with 3 in terms of Shaw, Maguire and Lindelof, Mazraoui and Dorgu. Ugarte and Casemiro. It's tried and tested in this tournament. I think they work well together. I think that I know people get on Ugarte's back a little bit, and this whole thing of like he's almost being compared to João Neves. That's like who he's meant to be now because they sold him and used the money to buy him. Like, I don't understand that. It's it's two different managers with two different philosophies trying to play two different ways. Your player isn't the same as our player, but I think Ugarte has been good this season, and Casemiro obviously has to play. I've gone back to the kind of old faithful. I know we've got Mount and Ahmad coming back, and I would be happy for either of them to start, especially Ahmad. I would pick Ahmad. But I've got a feeling he's going to go Garnacho, Bruno and Højlund. And the reason I've gone with Garnacho, Bruno obviously speaks for himself and so does Højlund. The reason I've gone with Garnacho is because I think he carries the ball up the pitch better and more consistently than Ahmad and Mount. Only slightly, but I do think he's got that sort of relentless optimism with his runs. And I hope that will damage and hurt Tottenham. But if Ahmad or Mount or both come in, I wouldn't be shocked. But I think he's going to bring Garnacho back in for this one personally.
I understand what you're getting at with all those.
Yeah.
Mine is slightly different. Yeah. I've gone. If we just do it as a back five, you get the idea of wing backs. You can see it on your screen. So Onana, obviously.
Yeah.
I've gone Dorgu on the left, Yoro, Maguire, and Mazraoui as my three centre backs. I've took a punt that Dalot is going to be fit. I don't know. I think if he's fit, he'll play. I think the manager likes him.
Yeah.
I agree with to a certain extent what you're saying about your guy having a good season. I do feel his worst 6-week spell at United has been the last 6 weeks. I do. Mm-hmm. I think he's. I'm not saying he's been terrible. I'm not saying that at all. But I don't think the level of performances have been as good lately as they were earlier, especially when Ruben Amorim came in and started using him regularly, because I know Eric Ten Hag wasn't really a massive fan of his. So that concerns me a little bit, and I wonder whether that concerns the manager going into a game like this. I agree with what you say about Garnacho. I love Alejandro Garnacho. I've done a video about him, sticking up for him. I think Ahmad will start this game. Yeah. I don't see a way that Ahmad Diallo, or Ahmad, sorry, I should say, that's how he likes to be known, doesn't start this game. I think he's the one threat we've got, probably other than Bruno, who's got goals and assists in him. Mm-hmm. And I also think you need him in this team to almost make up for the lack of goals from Rasmus Højlund, because I think Højlund will start, because I think Ruben Amorim isn't going to do what Ten Hag did in the FA Cup final and drastically change his system and have a false nine. I think he'll stick with what he knows and have that striker, and because there's only Rasmus Højlund available as a striker, I think he'll go with him, and I think you've got a little bit of a better chance of getting a goal out of someone like Ahmad than you have with without him. So that's it. Let us know in the chat in the comments, because it could go either way, and I get your point. Maybe even Mason Mount. Before the Chelsea game, I thought Mason Mount was getting himself into contention for the Europa League final, but I did say it might be a little bit of an audition, that game at Stamford Bridge, and I did think he didn't really do a lot. I just wonder whether the manager's looking at it going, can I take a punt on a player who had a great game against when he came on against Athletic Club, was it, in this, in the second leg?
Yeah.
But overall, he's still, I think, even if we're being kind to Mason Mount, I think it's safe to say the jury's out on him. Yeah. I don't think we can say he's definitely made it as a Manchester United player, although we can still see there's a player there. Let us know what you think. Before we get into Spurs, get your phones out, film yourselves in landscape. You know this by now. For 30 seconds, give us your score prediction, send it to paddockmatchday@gmail.com, and we will use that as part of our pre-match build-up on the watch-along. You never know, we might even use it at some of our socials as well, so make sure you send that in. Let's talk about Spurs then. What do we know about them other than the fact that actually a little bit worse than us in the Premier League?
They've done pretty well in the Europa. Obviously, they were in the final, but they've much like us had a kind of two different seasons. They've won 9 of the 14 games that they've played, drawn 3, lost 2. Not quite as good as us, unbeaten as we are, but they've done very well. 27 goals, just under 2 a game. Do
you think it's right for this, for us as a team and for us on this preview, to focus on that Europa League? Do you think there's a touch of similarities going on here with us and Spurs, in the sense that when you're looking at them in the Europa, it's a different animal than what you see in the Premier League? Or do you think this is because it's Premier League opposition? How do you weigh that up? Because this is what I keep telling myself about us.
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's not going to play like a league game anyway, because it's a cup final. So that is something different. Like, you watch that Palace versus City game. Palace wouldn't have played like that in the FA Cup final, in a Premier League game, the way they did in the FA Cup final. They wouldn't accept 22% possession. I know they won the game, and maybe they'd sit back against City, but it wouldn't have looked like that. There's so many games you look at finals, they don't play the same way the league version of that game does. They're usually cagier, teams take less risks. there's not a chance for a draw, so it's literally all or nothing. And I really do think that changes how teams play. I'm hoping that it plays more like a European match, obviously, because we've been terrible in the league. But I think all of those things that we mentioned earlier on come into this, about the consequences, about the pressure, about we haven't won a trophy in 16 years it is for Tottenham, and United have won one in 12 months ago with almost entirely the same team. I do think it matters. Just looking at Tottenham's injuries, they've obviously got a handful of injured players out. Maddison being a big one, of course. Kulusevski, we saw last week that he's going to have a surgery, so he's not going to be playing until next season. Sarr seems to be injured as well. He got a bit of a back injury against Villa last week. Could be back, but probably won't be 100%. Bergvall again as well. He's kind of made himself a big player for Tottenham. He probably won't be back, but again, he's kind of in that Dalot, De Ligt kind of space where he might be, but he's not going to be fit. And I think Heung-min Son as well is just coming back from injury. So there's a good number of players there that won't either be playing or won't be fully fit for Tottenham, and that has to help United, surely. It just has to.
Yeah, I know we've got our injury issues. Someone like Lisandro Martinez, for example, if he was fit, he starts.
Yeah.
He fits into this team perfectly, and he's someone we need, but he obviously isn't available. Then you've got question marks around the likes of Yoro, around the likes of De Ligt, around the likes of Dalot. Joshua Zirkzee is another one. We don't know if he's going to be available for this final. It doesn't. The latest we had the other day was that he could be, but again, it seems unlikely. So we are missing some key players as well.
3 of our starting back 5. Yeah, let's be honest. Martinez, De Ligt, Dalot, I think would all start every week.
100%.
So it is significant. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously Spurs. It's just very, very samey, innit, between us and Spurs. When you look at the league form, you look at the players, the amount of players we're missing. Yeah, it does feel a little bit similar. With all that being said, then.
Oh dear.
Give me your score prediction, you bastard.
I'm so nervous when I think about this. I'm so scared because it's one of those games as well. Because not only is it absolutely massive, it's the sort of soul-crushing combination of the high is high, but not that high. But the low is absolutely rock bottom low. Not only are you not in any European competition next season, you've lost to the most meme banter team in England. It's and yet, if you win, well, also you've lost 100 million quid straight away. You're not in any European competition. You've lost it, but if you win, you've won the second best European competition. So it's like if we win, and obviously I would love to win, and it'd be great to win the Europa League in and of itself, but I feel like the lows are worse or bigger than the highs for this. So it's just an absolute nightmare of a game. I'm going to say I'm really worried. I think we might lose. I don't want to predict a loss, but I think it's an absolute toss of a coin. And if I toss the coin in my mind now, 1-1 United win on penalties. But honestly, I really think Tottenham could do us. I really do. Everyone seems so confident, and I'm not confident at all. What do you think?
I am a bit confident, mate.
God.
I am.
Why?
Because you can't erase what Spurs are. Like they've not won a trophy since 2008 for a reason.
But Newcastle beat Liverpool.
They just, this is what they do. And also, I look at the teams, and I disagreed with Gary Neville, and I've said this on podcasts about there's none of our players that get into their team. I think you have to look at form. You have to look at, I know we're in bad form in the Premier League, but so are Spurs. You have to look at the players you're looking at right now. Is Heung-min Son a better player than Ahmad? Yeah, but right now, this season, has he been? No. There's lots of players there that I think are capable of stepping up for Manchester United. Yeah. I think that, you mentioned it earlier, having that experience, we've played in finals. This team has been to lots of finals over the last couple of years. The only time Spurs have been in the last finals over 17 years, they've lost them all. So I think that matters. I just do. I think we'll win. I think it'll be relatively comfortable. I go 3-1. I think my boy Ahmad. I think Bruno, and I think Mason Mount off the bench. There you go. There's my.
I love that so much.
They'll get a goal off. I don't know. Son. That's my full prediction. I think there's more of a chance of Spurs having a bit of a head loss than us.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think that's in their DNA.
Yeah.
To lose their heads. Where, don't get me wrong, United now and again can, but it's not something you just associate with Manchester United or they lose their heads all the time. If anything, we don't get stuck in and sort of have that about us enough. Yeah. Where Spurs, they do it like almost constantly. It's like a club tradition.
And the other difference here is, if they lose this, I think it's almost certain their manager gets sacked.
I think he could get sacked if they win.
Yeah,
I was speaking to a Spurs fan the other day, and he said, even if we win this, I think Ange will go.
Yeah, they're 2 years into this project and it's not working. I know Amrim isn't working so far, but he's in his first season. It's not even been a full season. I think that is another thing that they're more likely to get their heads down than we are. But I just worry that our inability to score goals is going to do it.
That plays into it as well. I think you've got a manager in the dressing room and you're thinking, this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and he's going in the summer anyway. It does matter that. Who gives a toss? Honestly, if you're sat there and listening to a manager and think, even if I don't particularly like him, he's going to be here next season, I may as well, do what he's asking me to do. I think it just does with footballers. I think we saw it with Ralph Rangnick. With us, people struggled because they knew he was dead man walking because he was on a short-term basis. Get involved in the chat in the comments. Let us know what you think. Give us your score predictions. Send them to. Go on, we'll be all right.
I'm really scared.
You know what? We'll be all right with Manchester United. Man.
Yeah, we will be.
Do you know what I mean? Like, we have to remember that it'll be horrible if we lose. But with Man United,
bad if we lose.
Okay.
The memes will last forever.
We'll beat him 3-1, I told you. Go and check Joe out on the Sloppy Joe's podcast. You know where to find me. I'm going to be over in Bilbao with Adam McCullough as well. I'll be giving you pre-match build-up, obviously some reactions from the ground and all that stuff all over the socials. We'll try and send a video to these. Well, not try. We will send a video with these guys on the watch along as well. So make sure you are hitting like, share and subscribe. That's been Joe. I've been Jay. This has been a preview for a game that really is the big one. Thanks for watching.